Hello pro strikers, would you like to be able to land counter punches like Ilia Topuria, Conor McGregor or Sugar Sean O'Malley? Of course you would. Well, you are in luck, as this video is going to help you understand how to do just that. When we think of counters, evasive moves like slips, rolls, the Mayweather pullback come to mind, but a good counter punch can be a lot simpler to land, and the simple step back can be all it takes. The fundamentals of counter punching are balance, timing and composure. For this video I'm using extracts from a one-to-one session with myself and pro striking athlete Tim Wild. Tim represents Team Renegade in Birmingham, home to current UFC champion Leon Rocky Edwards. With Tim currently signed to Bellator/PFL and riding a 6-fight unbeaten streak. When looking to counterfight, we need to have a solid base, and by that I mean a good stance. We need to be able to punch and move our feet at the same time. In mixed martial arts, fighters will often stand much further away than they would in boxing, kickboxing or Muay Thai. So being able to cover distance as you punch is vital, as well as learning how to retreat while staying on balance. Drilling in and out footwork is essential. In the first drill you can see in the video, I'm asking Tim to left hook whilst moving forward and backward. It's a basic piece of footwork, but it is challenging. It's hard to throw a punch that is going in a direction that you aren't moving. I'm asking Tim to stay in motion, as the idea is to catch an opponent coming in rather than having to plant to land a shot on a stationary, shelled up fighter. In mixed martial arts, we not only have to worry about the punch itself, but the potential for a follow-up takedown. So moving whilst punching can prevent, or at least make it more difficult for an opponent to grab a hold of you. As Tim is moving backwards, we are focusing on his base, keeping a good wide stance and not overcommitting on his shots. So first we're doing this on the pads, and then you can see Tim practicing the same skill on the bag. Following the bag with good stance whilst punching is a great way to practice. This is not about power, it's about footwork, and you have to remember that. Now, if you have a training partner, you can make the drill more effective by having one person guide the bag for you. It makes the drill a little easier, as you don't have to worry so much about moving the bag with your punches and start thinking about the power. Here you can see me guiding the bag forward and guiding the bag backwards, and Tim just has to follow it and remain in distance to punch whilst keeping in a good stance. When looking at Ilia Topuria, we can see he has near perfect balance. It's my favourite thing about him. He has a slight bend in the knee, feet outside of his hips, and he sits nicely into a wide base. He moves gracefully in and out like a Latin or ballroom dancer. He's not herky-jerky moving around for the sake of it. The way he moves enables him to always be in position to defend himself as well as punch with power. The first skill is to push in and out, both feet moving together. Now, to bait an opponent to throw a strike, you can use a false entry, stepping in with the lead foot and then withdrawing it. The obvious feint is with the hands, but you can also feint with the feet. And by stepping in and putting the weight into the front foot, it enables you to push off of it and spring back out. Topuria always remains on balance when he does this, and it's the #1 thing I'd encourage someone to practice, especially if you want to fight like this guy. Now, as much as these fights hit with power, that is not the focus, it's more about positioning. When practicing with Tim, I constantly tell him to relax, loosen his shoulders, and to try his best not to force power. If he tenses up or loads up, he'll miss the timing, especially when trying to time a counter as an opponent steps in. So remaining loose is very important. When we talk about rhythm, we can go back to the bag drill, where it's all about finding that groove and getting used to punching with control. Control is king. You need to develop fluidity with your punches, and that can only come by letting go of the tension. Going back to positioning, to counter punch effectively, you need an opponent in front of you. You want to draw them on a straight line, so if you move laterally too much or keep attempting to create angles, you aren't going to be able to counter punch effectively. When an opponent is on a line, you can gauge the timing a lot easier. Now, this isn't to say you shouldn't create angles, you absolutely should when leading, as this makes it harder for the opponent to counter you. You see where I'm going with that? In order to draw an opponent strike out and time it, you need them right in front. We're working towards the counter as a goal. So far, we have 3 key points. Stay on balance in a good stance. Keep them in front of you when you want to counter. Remember the goal. What are we doing it for? Stay loose and relaxed when you strike. Let go of any tension, as this is going to help you with your timing. Tensing up will cause a delay. It will make your punch slower. Now, there is of course technical aspects when throwing the actual punch, but timing trumps technique when it comes to counter fighting. If you have a solid stance, the rest should fall into place. Tactics over technique. Timing beats speed, speed beats power. We have this example of Brandon Vera knocking out his opponent with a left hook. He goes backwards in a straight line, the opponent runs in on a blitz, and Vera just sneaks that left hand straight over the top. If you look at the position of his arm, it's completely locked out. It's not a traditional left hook, he's not planted, he's moving as he lands the punch. It's all about the timing and the accuracy. So we want to practice this on the pads. I'm working with Tim. we're trying to get a lure off a 1 or a 1-2, and then as I step in, he's going to slide back and out the way. You've got to master finding your range really quickly. That's the key. Your eyes getting used to where the target is, and that is something Topuria does masterfully. When he slides back on his left hook, there's no load upon the shot. He's punching almost from his hip. He's shooting that punch from the hip, and he just turns it over beautifully. It's all in the timing. And again, keeping that balance, keeping that perfect stance. Now this is called a Russian right hand. It's a step back right hand. So what Tim's doing there is shooting the right leg back and turning the hip. This is very similar to how O'Malley knocked out Aljamain Sterling, and it's very similar how Conor McGregor knocked out Eddie Alvarez. He got the draw by extending his lead hand, by presenting his head forward, giving a sense of false distance, and then as Alvarez stuck in, he stepped back ever so slightly, made the Alvarez punch fall short, and then he just popped him with that counter backhand. Now this was a southpaw versus orthodox matchup. There's a little bit more space for McGregor to avoid that right hand, so whereas me and Tim are working at orthodox versus orthodox, but the principle is the same. You just get in a draw with like a non-committal jab, a jab from the distance where you're standing. You don't need to take a big step in, you don't need to take a big step out. You just get in the draw on that strike, and then you're getting ready to pull back. Now by stepping that right leg back, you turn the hip over, you turn the shoulder over, which generates more power into the punch, and it also creates more space, that little bit of extra room that you need to get that torque into the punch, get that rotation over on the knuckle. When we look at Aljo versus Sean, it's the same principle. Lead hands out, nice wide stance. Look how wide his feet are. And he jockeys back, still in stance, and then kicks out that back foot, that rear foot to turn the punch over. As Aljamain Sterling is rushing forward, and again, the punch lands perfectly. Look at where Sugar Sean is looking. He's looking at the target when he turns the punch through. So that's another skill we're focusing on the pads with Tim. Where are you looking? Where are your eyes facing? And again, after that right hand lands, he takes a half a second. So when we look at the McGregor one again, and when we look at the Sugar Sean one again, after that punch turns through, you're in a good position to follow up with a left hand if it's there, but you're taking a look. You always need to keep your eyes on the prize. It's got to be reactive. So when I'm practicing this stuff on the pads with Tim, we're always building into a reaction. So we might start stationary, just getting the technique down, but then we're going to move and transition into more dynamic stuff where I'm stepping in and he doesn't know when I'm going to step in. So he actually has to build and develop that time. So whether he's practicing a drop back left hand or a drop back into the Russian right hand, it's the same thing. So when we're practicing these things on the pad, you start off gear 1, stationary. Just get the technique and do it very choreographed. Understand the rhythm, the timing, how to throw the punch loosely, how to connect perfectly onto the pad or onto the bag. Again, you can use the bag, you can get the bag to swing in, and as it comes in, you practice stepping back to land the punch with that kick back technique on the right hand or that step back into the left hook. Once you've kind of got that down, then you can be more dynamic, because then it becomes more realistic, as in a fight, we don't know when the person's going to step in. We have no idea. We have to react correctly, and that is the key with counter fighting, especially with the step back technique. I think I've gone over everything there. As always, thank you for watching the video. You can also follow Pro Striking over on the Patreon for extra breakdowns over there, and you can shoot me a message in my DMs for any personal questions or any particular fighters or fights you'd like me to break down. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you later.